Well, we could be just a couple of weeks away from a railroad workers' strike. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk, and we're really seeing labor and management come to a head in what's going on with the railroad workers. And if you haven't been following this, it could very likely lead to some pretty large impacts on our daily lives. Everything from being able to get goods from across the country to just being able to get things from the shipping yard to your grocery store. And everything else in between. So what's going on here? A lot of moving pieces, and we'll hear about some of it with Mark Denzler from the Illinois Manufacturers Association, joining with employer associations from across the Midwest and across the country. Even the U.S. Chamber of Commerce signing a letter that they sent to Congress to do something about what's going on between the railroad workers' labor unions and the railroad companies. And I want to bring up here the latest from the Railroad Workers United. It's a union of a variety of different railroad crafts. And they said in the statement on Monday that their vote for a new contract was split. So they ultimately are saying that it shows that there's discontent within the union, and they're not happy with the proposals. They talk about a cut in the workforce. They talk about how they haven't had raises in 3 years. They lay out some of their other grievances, and it just goes on from there. So the Railroad Workers United group, which is kind of an umbrella of sorts over, I think there's 12 different crafts within the Railroad Workers Union, and 4 of the unions voted against these proposed contracts. And we're now getting to the point where if there's not a deal in place in just a couple of weeks, we could see some substantial impacts on our economy, and in particular, even here in Illinois. I talked with Mark Denzler, Illinois Manufacturers Association president, and got his assessment of what's going on. He was a signatory onto a letter to congressional leaders, the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, the Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, respectively, urging them to do something. What is that something? Here is Mark Denzler from the Illinois Manufacturers Association.
Sure. So we are calling on the congressional leaders to take action and implement recommendations from the Presidential Emergency Board if there is going to be a rail strike the first week of December. Back in September, the 7 Class 1 railroads sat down with organized labor. The President, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Commerce reached an agreement. Unfortunately, only 8 of the 12 unions have ratified that agreement, and there is a threat of a rail strike now starting on December 5th that would absolutely devastate the economy, particularly in Illinois, our manufacturing sector, retail sector, agriculture sector. And Greg, we're a transportation hub. We're the only state in the country with all 7 Class 1 railroads. So if rail were to go on strike, you can't ship products like food and gasoline and medicine and automobile. And that would have just a devastating impact on our economy to the tune of about $2 billion a day, according to economic studies.
So Denzler is joining with other employer organizations urging that Congress intervene and pass a resolution that would require the Presidential Emergency Board's recommendations to be laid on top of this ongoing labor dispute between the railroad workers and the rail companies. What exactly is in that PEB? Question I asked Mark Denzler of the Illinois Manufacturers Association.
Yeah, so the Presidential Emergency Board met with business and labor, or the rails and labor, and they listened to both sides, and they issued a set of recommendations that include things like, salary and hours and benefits and those kinds of things. And they issue those recommendations to try to help foster an agreement. And ultimately, back in September, with the president's direct input, the railroads and labor unions reached an agreement. But as I said, unfortunately, 4 of the unions have failed to ratify that. And so again, Congress is vested with this power. They don't like to use this power, and it's very, very, very rarely done. So even the Labor Secretary has indicated that they may call upon Congress to take action in the event of an imminent rail strike. It is that important, to the economy, to our national security, the ability, to move things around the country. That Secretary Walsh has even indicated that how important this is, and that a shutdown is unacceptable because of the harm it would inflict on jobs, families, farms, and businesses and communities. With his statement,
and I think Denzler again highlighted earlier on that Illinois is the only state in the nation with all 7 Class 1 railroads that come and converge into the heart of the country. I mean, you look at a map, and very much Illinois is the heart of the country when it comes to intermodal. Not only do we have all Class 1 railroads in Illinois that then act as arteries going out to the rest of the country, you've also got all of the other major highways that are allowing for rail to transfer the shipping containers to diesel trucks to then get those out into the marketplace. So you can see that a state like Illinois really would be even more impacted than other areas of the country. So fascinating to see that and hear that. But I also asked Denzler about how indeed would congressional action compel somebody to work. I mean, you can't necessarily compel somebody who wants to strike to go to work, right? How would they, if Congress ultimately did approve something like this, how would they go about actually compelling people to work?
No, well, I mean, and so we're hopeful, Greg, that the railroads will sit down with the unions and that there will be some kind of agreement. But barring that, we're down to 2 weeks. If there is no agreement, then Congress has the ability to step in and to pass legislation implementing these recommendations. And at that point, labor under law has to follow those recommendations. And again, it's a rare case when Congress would step in, but given the sheer impact of what this would do to the U.S. economy and American consumers, particularly at the end of harvest, during the busiest shipping season that we have in the United States, the harm would just be absolutely horrible for our country and, impacting our economy, impacting everyday Americans, likely resulting in higher prices of gasoline at the pump, higher cost of groceries at a time we're already seeing, record inflation in the last 40 years.
I would imagine the impacts could be even beyond what is anticipated here. And listen, this is just after we're still dealing with supply chain issues. This is the supply chain, and if there's a strike, you could see that it would cascade like dominoes. Industry, sector after sector, job after job. Your ability to get food, your ability to get fuel, your ability to get goods. It could really have some lasting impacts. We'll see where this ultimately goes. But a couple of weeks, less than a couple of weeks. So apparently December 5th, the first week of December, if a decision is not met, then they could have a strike of railroad workers. And you got to think, they might actually have to start shutting things down before that date, because you can't just flip the switch. If they're going to go on strike and it's clear, there's going to be some steps to have to implement before an actual work stoppage occurs. Very interesting and troubling. We'll watch that closely. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. You can always email me, bishoponair@gmail.com, or find me on Twitter, Facebook. Just search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that.